Hello and welcome to Miniature Wargaming Labs. I'm Brian,
I'm James.
and today we're going to be talking about Oathmark, and James will be talking about that. So, James, we'll start off with our simplest question: who made this game?
All right, so Brian, I know you're excited by this one. So this is Oathmark. We'll start there. So it's an Osprey game, and let's look at the author, Joseph McCullough. So
I've
Brian,
never
I know
heard that
you're a
name
big
before.
you're a big Frostgrave fan, and
You mean all these books?
and whenever the Frostgrave physical copy makes its way from England to New Mexico, they're
Next
just standing on a
week.
pile. So I like to call Joseph McCullough the hardest working man in wargaming.
Honestly, I mean, since Frostgrave, he has produced so many books. Um, and plus he has a side magazine for Frostgrave. Um, I mean, how many supplements does Frostgrave have? He has Oathmark now. He has Rangers of Shadowdeep, which was recently picked up by Modifius. Um, just all around, just been pumping out amazing, amazing material for miniature gaming. Okay,
And
so we've gone over his other games, and we'll be going over Frostgrave 2.0 in the future. So, what is the theme of this game?
so this one is supposed to be a fantasy dark ages. So there's a reference to there being a fallen empire, but now there's new rival kingdoms trying to carve and take territory away from each other and fight each other. And so this is also an old school rank and flank game. So this is your chance to like get your table out there and line up all your guys on their little rectangular or square bases and just start pushing big units around. So it's a return to like what I remember wargaming was like in the late '80s, as as all
So,
back.
kind of reminiscence of Warhammer Fantasy Battles
You know,
or battle systems.
so that's why I held this up. So this is the first war game I bought out there, and then I bought a dwarf army for Warhammer Fantasy Battle, but never got around to playing it. And then the end times came, and that washed away. I mean, Warhammer
You'll
Fantasy
never
Battle,
wash away 8th edition.
yeah. So Age of Sigmar came, and that came back to a squad-based large skirmish, and not the big full epic battles that Warhammer was known for. And a lot of
Yes.
companies, well, we saw a lot of companies stepped up to fill that gap. So like Lions Rampant and Dragons Rampant
Yep.
had
From
rules for
Osprey.
those miniatures to create skirmish games, and Kings of War and Warlords of Erewhon also Fireforge Games stepped in there. So this actually looks like Osprey Games step in. I think they probably could have done this a few years earlier just to take advantage of
Well, I mean, they had Dragon Rampant and Lion Rampant.
yeah, but those weren't really scaled to go to like 300 figures on each
That's.
side.
I mean, they just had to wait for Joseph to be ready to
Yeah,
make this game.
they well, you know what? They ceded the ground to Warlord Games, and I forget who owns Kings of War.
Yes.
Mantic? Not Mantic.
I'm not 100% sure on that one.
Yeah,
Um,
I know in like the game store back in Virginia, everyone just switched over to Kings of War because it had the same units, the same unit types, rat creatures, elves, whatever. So, but this is Joseph McCullough's take on that rank and flank.
yes. So, being it from Osprey usually means there's no actual miniatures, official miniatures for it from Osprey. So, what do you need to play this game exactly?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the miniatures. So what you notice about this book is like when you read like Kings of War and Dragon Rampant and Warlords of Erewhon, um, you could see that they were picking up the desiccated leftovers of Warhammer Fantasy Battle because they had troop types for each one of the units. that was abandoned by Age of Sigmar. So there's
Yes.
the rat, they call them rat people, skeleton army, and undead horde. They'd go down, and it was a 1-for-1 match. So you can tell times have moved on because there's not a 1-for-1 match in the game.
Yes.
And there is actually a miniature line. Just like Frostgrave is miniature agnostic, there's still a miniature line of North Star. So North Star is also supporting this game with like a box of Oathmark. And what's interesting about it is when you play this game, Joseph actually writes in there, you can go to North Star, buy one box of 30 miniatures, and that's what you need to play the smallest game.
Yep.
So those 30 miniatures will create 3 units of 10 guys. And so North Star makes plastic guys there. They're cheap. You can field an army. So it's really designed of like you're not taking your old Warhammer army out. You can actually, it's the idea that someone will start new into this. But he says specifically in there, the rules mechanics are designed for games of 30 to 300 miniatures. So even though it seems like a lightweight rule set, it can handle the big epic games. Then you'll need a table. So he recommends, the smallest games 2x4 all the way up to 4x6. So you can actually see where, you can buy one rule book.
2x4.
Yeah, you can buy one rule book, 2 boxes of miniatures, and you're ready to start playing. And the terrain he keeps really simple because he writes in there, you don't even need terrain. This is an old school Dark Ages medieval rank and flank. 2 guys set up in a field and you just charge at each other until winner takes all. If you want to play that way, it is fine. But I think he recommends on like some of the games, like 2 to 3 pieces of terrain. So your terrain cost, and most of that's just like a hill or like a stone wall. So it's like, and then 5D. It's a D10 based system. So he recommends 5 D10s in there, and then unit sheets for like a kingdom and a campaign sheet, which they're in the book, but you can go to Osprey Games and download the PDF and print off as many copies as you like. So when you look at the investment to play the game, it's actually really quite low. And if you could actually find a friendly local game store that had enough of them, you could probably just buy like the WizKids models. It'd be cheaper to go buy the North Star box, but
yes,
you could just raid like every WizKids. Just tear open the packs.
Also Games Workshop and plenty other miniature makers to get from. I'm glad it goes up to 300 because I'll need that much to fit my entire goblin army. So which is ready to go. Like it is ready to be put on the field whenever that is again. So since me and you already have armies that can play this game, and we play games similar to this game, who should play this game?
So I think this game was designed just like Frostgrave was like an intro level into skirmish miniature gaming. This actually is probably the simplest rank and flank miniature war game I've seen out there. So I think it's designed for beginners to bring them in there. But we've also seen in other games, if you want to play really large armies rapidly, it's lightweight enough that where, like with all your goblins, it's like, do you want to play an 8-hour game? Not really. You might want to get it done in a quarter of that time. Oathmark, I think, could achieve that. So I think what it's really designed to do is to get like new people in, but they want that feeling of like Saruman in Lord of the Rings, when you're standing on the tower and you see all the Uruk-hai. I mean, because that's what every rank and flank wargamer wants, is to feel like they have massive armies of men in phalanx and then like go out and do battle.
Definitely.
So I think
that's why I play miniature games.
So I don't think the Games Workshop Hobbit game achieves that. So if you want a low cost way to achieve that, I think that's what Oathmark's designed for.
All right. So, since you said it's for beginners, that means mechanic wise, it's going to be a little less intensive and more easy to understand your first time through. So, can you go over the game mechanics and how they work within the game?
Yeah. So, this is a lightweight rules frame. So the idea is, you go up, you set up your game, and you can either do it in a friendly way, or you can argue. The idea is you roll initiative. Whoever wins initiative gets to move first. And so it's not I go and move all my guys, and then you go and move all your guys. It's I move one unit, you move one unit, I move one unit, you move one unit. The point of getting initiative first is that if I can hit your unit first, you lose that movement on that guy. So it creates this idea that you want to clash first. But you know how Frostgrave really simplified a lot of the rules of, hitting someone, then wounding someone, and then someone taking a hit. So there's like 3 steps. Basically, when like 2 blocks of these unit formations, and so your soldiers have a fixed front. You can only have like 5 guys in a row, and then you stack them backwards. So it's always the same sized block. When those 2 blocks collide, you both count up like how many attack dice you roll. You roll those die, and then that's the number of wounds that comes off. So it's a very quick meat grinder effect. So there's not like, well, I hit you 7 times. Let's see how many of the 7 hits, pierces your armor, and then you make saves. It's like, nope, I got 7 hits, take 7 guys off. I got 5 hits, I take 5 guys off. And so you can see it speeds up the games by removing a lot of that minutia in there. And of course, certain units have special keyword abilities like shield and charge and something to make them different out there.
Special skills.
Yeah. And one of the he does have advanced rules, and the advanced rules is where you add like spellcasters, champions, kings, dragons. And so that's something that's also unique about this game, is that you can have a dwarf king assisted by an elf wizard with like 4 blocks of orc slave army. I know that was actually a big thing. Like Oathmark came out on, it's like, in real life, dwarves would never lead orc armies. And it's like, no, you're absolutely correct. In real life,
in real life,
lead orc armies. That would never happen.
Yep, it would never happen.
But it does create a dynamic of where you can play with like. So I always like to think of it like with Etten games, like when they have the swap meets and you have the junk man's table, like everyone's failed army projects piled up, and like you buy and trade those. It's like you could be like kid in there with like a fistful of dollars and like a bucket and say, I'll take some orcs, I'll take some dwarves. You know what?
I mean, I kind of have an army in the works that's that way. So I mean, several armies in the way that are like that. So it's like, well, I'll just take some of this, and I'll take some of this. I'll just throw that together, and boom. And that is honestly, that is what it is for. It's actually for Oathmark. So,
I should say there's an interesting, like, you have optional rules that you can pass on. So he has his basic rules of how to to take the 2 blocks and play like Pac-Man and just hit each other. Mm-hmm. But he has other rules of where like you can have these situations of where you roll initiative die, and if you roll, if you like roll the same number on both your die, you can have like a significant event happen. Say like a sniper shoots your general in the head. Like, crap. Of course, you can have the situation of where, both armies roll matching, and like both roll sniper and both the generals get shot in the head. So that can happen. Now, if both you and your opponent roll 8s, like there's 4 8s on the board, that's when a catastrophic event happens. So like, a volcano opens up in the middle of the ground and like spews magma over you, or like you knocked over a beehive and all the bees sting everybody. So he threw that in there for fun. You can have like these 1 in 1,000 chance events just randomly hit you guys.
I like that. So would you say those are some of the unique features of this game?
Yeah, I think so. We've seen that with Frostgrave of like these additional optional rules to add tasty flavor to your games. So I saw those tacked in there and said, well, that's just for thematic fun to create that, for when you're standing around the vending machine at Eton drinking Sunkist and going like, hey, remember when we tipped over that beehive in the middle of that game? It's like, yeah, just for fun. It makes the games memorable. You'll have that one oddball chance. Like, what was the chances that was ever going to happen?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a little flair to the stories of what you're building in game. All right. So, how is gameplay organized?
All right. So, you set the table, then you roll initiative. You play the games in turns, and so he writes in there that you can either play until you tabled. That's how he used to play, of like last man standing wins. But who knows how long that takes? Or you can play one of the scenarios he puts in the back of the book, which normally will take like 8 turns in there. So I think he's thinking like a 2-hour game. But when you start, you set like a point limit. So all these guys in here have points. So an idea of a low point game is 450 points, all the way up to like 6,000. It's considered like an epic. Get out the 6x4, get out your Warhammer 9th Edition army because you're going to need all those miniatures to play this way. But if you think of like some of the average costs of some of these miniatures, like if you wanted a full mounted heavy human knight, that's 50 points a guy. So you're not playing that in a 450 point game. You're playing your 9-point human militia guy. So, the points really set the tone for the game. And a dragon with wings costs 800 points. So if you want to bring that out, you want to play the 6,000.
Yeah, totally.
That way you can get your one female queen model and like 6 dragons and go, I'm the queen of dragons.
Or get that huge red dragon that D&D released a couple years ago. Slap that on the table. Just say, hey, this is 3,000 points because it's bigger than all your entire army.
I will say, so this is the first non-solo game we've talked about in a while, because we've been talking about this game before COVID came and we were going to get it. And so our copies were kind of delayed in getting them. So, but even though there's not a solo play option in this game, I think what you can do is, so I said like a dragon with wings is 800 points. So you could actually have it to where I could sit in my house. I've got my 6x4 table and I can say, let's play an 800 point game. I'll give you 1 dragon. Because there's no rules about like, well, you have to have a command squad and 2 troop choices. There's just, here's your troop choices. Here's what you can pick. And you say, okay, I'll take an 800 point. And you could be on a camera just looking at the table. And I could put the dragon down. And then you would just tell me where you want the dragon to go and we would play.
There you go.
So I think it's lightweight enough, and you could, if you play that option of elite versus swarm, or even elite versus elite, we can get 2 dragons and they can like fight at each other.
Dueling dragons.
Yeah. So I think you could probably use like a teleconferencing capability with this game.
I like that. I really do. So how do you kind of went over this in this, you kind of just mentioned this, but how exactly is an army organized, and how do you build your army, and what kind of aspects go into army building?
All right, so this is interesting. So you can tell there's 2 ideas going on here. There's a quick play way. So it's the idea of you and a friend buy North Stars, box of 30 miniatures each. You buy a book, you crack them open, assemble them, you play. So the idea is that there's a quick play of where you say, okay, I'll play a human army, you play an elf army, or we'll do human-human, and we'll just set points, and then we'll pick the units off of they have like a human list, an army list, elf, dwarf, goblin. All right. Now there's also one that's like the kingdom approach. So what you do is you take out your kingdom sheet, and you have 4 territories. And each territory you can populate with a location. So you can say, I want region 1 is my capital. That's going to be a dwarf city. Then region 2, I can have 2 choices. That can be, another dwarf city and like a dwarf mine. Then region 3 is like, I want a dragon's lair and I want a lumber camp. Now, each one of those places you select gives you different troop options and how many troops you can recruit from there. And then like certain troops are rare. So you work out this kingdom shape, and basically you're shaping your kingdom. You say, well, my kingdom is like wild hills full of trolls with a dwarf city in the center. So my dwarf will lead a horde of trolls. So you can really create this idea of what does your kingdom look like. And you can actually pick more territories than you could probably recruit units from, depending on your point list. So you take you can for dwarf, elf, or you can put everything into your kingdom and then recruit a 450 point army out of there. Now, where this comes into interesting is when you do a campaign mode, because you can start conquering someone's kingdom sheet.
Okay.
And impact their units in that way. So there's this risk management of in what ring do I place certain assets, because they'll give me certain troop types, knowing that in campaign play someone can invade your kingdom and like conquer that. And then like, so if I have a dwarf unit from a city in ring 3 and you occupy that, well, I still have those dwarves, but they're really sad now, and their morale takes a hit. And so there's that kingdom building aspect to it. So, but there's not actually a map. It's just a list of paper that you use an abstraction of, well, I'm going to evade this.
Yeah.
That. So, it gave the situation where each ring has like a rarity. So it's like, I could actually do like Game of Thrones and like in ring 4, take 4 dragon's layers and just, have my monarch in the middle city. It's just like, well, I can take out the queen and she can have an army of dragons.
Well, that's honestly really cool, because that gets me excited to play, because one of the armies that I'm building is giant eagles, men, elves, and dwarves. So I could have like 4 of those 4 kingdoms, and have each of those in different kingdoms, or mix them up,
Yeah. So we'll talk about the eagles later, because I've got the old Warhammer Isle of Blood set. Erin bought it years ago, and she only wanted the rat people, so I've got all the elves from that. So we'll talk about that and what we want from the game in the future.
Okay, so how much can you organize the units in your army?
So, like I said, the customization is huge. There's, as long as you've got the territory selected for that unit, you can take whatever you want. The only way you're really limited is in like the heart of your kingdom. You got to pick a capital city. That really affects who your general is going to be, who the king of your army is going to be. So if you're a dwarf-led kingdom, you can't pick an orc king to lead your army on the field. That's like the only limitation. And then after that,
it never happened in real life.
Yeah, in real life, a dwarf king would never ask an orc king to step in and fill that. I think there's no precedent for that. But if there's spellcasters, there's spells. I mean, and there's racially specific spells, so that's kind of a limit. A human can't cast elf spells. And there's also magic items, so you can customize heroes and champions with those magic items. So I think the formation, like what units you can pick, is just really out there. And remember, that's what Age of Sigmar first edition was supposed to be when they destroyed the point system, blew up the game. It was like, bring whatever you want. Just
which didn't work, which is why they're on the second rendition of of it. But
it was a necessary move to break people's mindset away from 8th edition, but it really messed with people's heads. Joseph McCullough achieved the same thing, but a little bit more palatably because there's points assigned and like a story of why dwarves were these orcs. And I know someone on Facebook actually cited the Cimmerian. Like the prequels to like the
Silmarillion. Silmarillion.
So, I can never pronounce. So someone actually cited that book in Lost Tales and gave an example of where humans and elves hired orcs to go to battle and said, "See, there's historical precedent that in someone else's imagination this could happen." If J.R.R. Tolkien said it was okay, we can play it that way.
Okay. So going back to the customization now, is this like Dragon Rampant where I can make my own units? So if I have different models, can I make my own units in this game? Are there rules for that, like there is in Dragon Rampant?
No, I know the rule you're talking about. No, you have very specific. It's kind of like Warhammer Fantasy Battle 2nd Edition of like you have very specific unit types, and you might be able to give like champions magic items, but a unit is a unit. There's every army has spearmen, every army has archers, line breakers, rangers, cavalry. Those are your units. The only thing you can really pick is how many over 10 do you want. So you've got like 10 to 20 person units. So but I'll say when we get to where we want the game to go, there's always a chance Joseph will write some supplement.
I mean, there's going to be at least 10 to 15 supplements for this game, a couple big books, maybe a magazine. If it's anything like his other books, there will be plenty of stuff to go with it. So speaking of, how does a campaign work? And I imagine that in the future we'll get just like Frostgrave got several campaign books.
Yeah, so the idea of the campaign system is he wrote up there that this is a 2-person campaign, which was from Frostgrave. We saw that. So it's not like we Kill Team or Necromunda or Warcry where you're trying to get, anywhere from 4 to 15 people to play round robin tournament style. The idea is that it's you and another person facing off. But that actually makes sense here because it's your kingdom trying to conquer another kingdom. So it makes sense on that. And like I said, you can actually conquer each other's kingdom sheets until you finally strike the capital and like seize it. And then you win. So it is when you start playing, you determine there's actually a table for what kind of battle you're going to play. Then you guys say, all right, well, let's pick a point size, 450 to 6,000. All right, we'll put together an army list. All right, now we'll roll in the scenario table. And then after that, you fight the battle and you record the results. Now, I hesitate because I don't think it really captures the nuance. So when you say what type of battle you're going to fight, you go to this table and you roll. And one of the results can be like deep strike. So region 4 or 5 on your kingdom list is supposed to be your borders. Well, if I roll deep strike, I might actually get to like level 2 or 3.
Oh wow!
So I basically shot through your my Wehrmacht army, has blitzkrieged deep into your territory and seized one of your cities. Or you can just get regular engagement on the border. So there's all these different ways that you can actually pop around. And like you said, you could accidentally like hit someone's capital city deep in
That's
there.
cool.
And like when you get to the results, depending on how a scenario goes, you get to occupy that city, so they get troops from that city get lower morale, which will affect you later on. Do you really want to use your units from that city? Of course, if you only picked one city because you went for an elite dragon army, you might only have one city that's producing basic line cavalry or basic line infantry for you. So that might not be an option. You might have to think about having redundant cities and redundant lumber yards to recruit dwarf rangers if you're actually worried about that. So it's that campaign city really plays into like how you're going to field your army.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so I thought that was really clever of how to handle without drawing a map and playing out a campaign like that.
Yeah, you don't need a map. You just have this is the levels of my kingdom. I love that. That really simplifies campaigns. It's a really simplified campaign system that sounds like it's going to be super effective and super really easy to go through. That I really want to play now. I really wish we could.
Well, it makes the initiative roll because it's like you roll for initiative when you determine the order for who's going to be the attacker and who's going to be the defender. So I can actually have it to where I win 3 times in a row, and I'm just like conquering your kingdom. And all of a sudden you win an attacker and get deep strike, and then you launch this Hail Mary objective to strike deep into the heart of my territory and like conquer a city with my critical knights are recruited from. So, you can see how like the narrative aspect of like that
totally.
medieval warfare chaos could play out.
I like that. So I know you mentioned it before. There are scenarios in the book. What kind of scenarios are included in the book?
So there's 5 scenarios, which actually seem kind of short for him, but I bought Battlesworn, the PDF there.
Oh, okay.
So it looks like each expansion is going to have like 5 more scenarios, and
that makes sense. That's usually how it goes.
War Games Illustrated and War Game Models magazines will all have their exclusive Oathmark ones in there. But with these 5, you have these actually structured pretty much like 8-turn games. They set out how many points, like if there's going to be a points difference. So you might have a situation like King of the Hill or defender versus attacker. Attacker gets more points, but the defender has the advantage of terrain, and the rules of the scenario favor them. There's also general vandalism, of where you actually got to go up and break your opposing kingdom's Oathmarks, and they have to defend them. There's like one I liked is chance engagement. So it's kind of like the Battle of Gettysburg, of where, Warhammer 40K, they have reinforcements. So only a portion of your army shows up, and then each round more and more units pile into the board, and so you've got to seize like a piece of ground. There's another one that's where like you have to seize the bridge over the river, so it basically becomes a Battle of Arnhem, if you're just duking it out over like 5 inches over a river there. Because a lot of these units can't cross rivers, so it's like that bridge is it. So.
Bridges are important. All right, so I know we were talking about this. So what is this game missing? Right, I know Oathsworn is already out. We'll pretend that doesn't exist.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare this to Battle System. All right. So what is this game missing? So what makes this game so simple is a rank and flank is like you can move forward, back, and sideways, but how do you pivot? So a lot of the complexity of rank and flank games and a lot of the cries of foul come from rotating units. So in this game, the way he handles that is you can move and you can maneuver. There's no like, well, if you pivot point on this, that uses half your move to make arcs like that. So a lot of that trying to capture real world, how to move troops in linear formations, and like okay, well, this guy stands still, but this guy's got to run 20 inches to rotate the unit. He just erases all that complexity and says, okay, the unit moves forward, backwards, left, right, and then it can maneuver. Doesn't eat up in your maneuver. There's nothing like that. But of course, in games like Battle System, what you had is like, well, yeah, there's a tight rank formation. There's also loose formation. There's skirmish formation. Elite, well-disciplined, trained troops can maneuver in those wheel formations more easily than, your farmer's militia who will have a real hard time. So that's that crunchy granularity to other rank and flank. Joseph stripped that out. It's just, move your block and pivot and fight. So you could see a situation in his game of where I can move a rank up and then pivot. And then on my next turn, I'll pivot. So I stole that 5 inches and then move again. So people might say, well, that's kind of messed up. I mean, you're stealing a march. And would anyone really march across the field like that? No, but it makes the game go faster if I don't have to worry about arguing over that type of stuff. And I can see a lot of stuff in aerial combat missing. So
that's fair.
But of course, I could see. So let's take something from like Oathmark. I could see a future expansion of elves getting Pegasi and orcs getting bats. And well, how would the troops on the ground deal with an elf with a bow flying in the air?
Yeah.
So, or like if I have like the Warhammer Fantasy Battle, the Isles of Blood, I have the guy on the eagle with the lance. Well, there's no rules for him. But you know what? I do not doubt that he has the capability to write a rule set for including a lot of those aerial units.
Yes. So for the movement, I think I see a lot of games moving that way with a simplified movement. I don't know if we've talked about this game, but A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yes,
that's how it is, and that's a rank and flank game that also does that, where it's you have several different moves you could do. One is move and pivot, and there's no like you have the center point. That's where you pivot. That's what you pivot on. But you just move and pivot. That's the move.
Yeah, that's the same in Oathmark.
And I love it. Yep.
But he has additional wheels where you can pivot on the corners also, and that's where you can start. And that's where you can start stealing inches as you're moving down the board.
Yeah.
But
all right. So where do you hope this game goes?
So I bought Battlesworn, and I was looking at it, and so there's rules in there for how to do engineers and riverine using the rivers and stuff. And there's also he put more rules in there for expeditions. So instead of when we play campaigns of having a scenario, hit the scenario table again, when you play an expedition, 2 scenarios are linked. And the results of the first scenario impact how you set up in the second scenario. And then there's more magic items, more spells. Battlesworn is actually, as you campaign with your troops, they become more veteran and they get battle honors that gives them buffs and as they play future games. So seeing how lightweight the main rulebook is and seeing what Battlesworn is, and knowing how Frostgrave went, I could see a book of fortifications. So like there's a section in like battle system of like, well, how do I take my rank and flank army and do a city fight? Because he says all units have to be this wide. Well, are you eventually going to have a city fight system? Like, so in battle system, they had a rule called like cramming through, of where you're like, okay, well, my guys slipped through here. How are we going to deal with that? I'm sure he's got a way. Also, how can I bring my flying elf eagles and like my dragon riders? Maybe if I want to steal Caradron overlords, get my little flying ships there. But it's a dark ages. There's no
units
gunpowder
like other games.
Yeah. So in other ones, we always wonder. With this one, I'm not too worried because I'm sure before Oathmark 2.0 comes out, there will be like 10 books and like, some other, because this is set in like some marshes. I'm sure there'll be some like island grouping filled with ghosts that we can take our armies into, like maybe like an archipelago setting.
Or
Maybe
maybe
with pirates.
Frozen City.
Yeah.
That's where you get your city fighting. Is in maybe a place. Maybe call it Felstad.
Well, you know what? He could actually set something up there. The Frozen North. Take something from the Forgotten Realms. Yeah.
Love it. Okay, so I mean, I know why I want to play this game, and I know why you want to play this game. So why should anybody else play this game?
So if you're interested in playing rank and flank, there are some options out there. So there's Command Games, Song of Ice and Fire, Kings of War, Fireforge. But you know how like when you bring someone up for board games, you have like Ticket to Ride is like, if you've never played a board game, here's a board game that everyone can have fun with.
Yes.
Oathmark is like the Ticket to Ride of the rank and flank battle armies. So there's a low buy-in. It's easy the rules are like the easiest ones out there. There's no proprietary models. I mean, if you actually think about it, I could just take pieces of cardboard and cut them out to the length of like what the bases fronts would be. And then just like I could put chess pieces, or I can just write like a die and like this unit has 20 guys and just, like Magic the Gathering, just count down. So it's like we could play with cardboard right now. Buy the book, play with cardboard, and be good. So I think it's probably the easiest rank and flank war game to enter.
Okay. So why shouldn't people play this game? What would be reasons to avoid this?
So I think one of the reasons, if you want squad-based skirmish, that's what Age of Sigmar, Warlords of Erewhon. If you just want the crowd of 15, 20 guys, 5 guys, some people don't want to worry about facing or flanks. They just want that more SPQR skirmish games. So they might want large skirmish games, but they want a skirmish game. They're not interested in moving like the old linear formations around. That style of play just might not appeal to them. And I mean, even in Warhammer Fantasy Battles, that's why eventually they broke away into Age of Sigmar. That type of gaming just wasn't popular.
It's kind of old school now. It's a retro kind of game. In a sense, it does restrict movement and the flow of battle, and but it definitely has its own spot in the world of gaming. Yeah. So, do you have any other closing remarks on this game?
So easy, low cost of entry, easy to get into, and if there's ever any games writer out there who can write seamless expansions to the game, is probably Joseph McCullough. So, I think it's going to be, and you know what? It's simple enough. I could actually see it on the tournament scene.
I wouldn't mind that. We need another flank and rank game that is on the tournament scene.
Yeah, and I mean, so the idea of the channel is how many games can you play for like the least cost there. So my plan is I have the SPQR, like the Romans in there. Well, it's a guy with a shield, a sword, and chainmail. Well, so I can play SPQR, I can play Hail Caesar, I can play Infamy. Now I can play Oathmark. If you have Kings of War,
Lion Rampant,
you're playing your dwarf army, buy Oathmark. Same army, you've now got 2 different rule systems. So
my Goblin army is for 5 different games. So, well, let's see. Age of Sigmar, Warhammer Fantasy Battles, Oathmark because it's still in Square base, so it's technically not AOS, but you know, if you play the right people.
It's supposed to be qualify forever. If you bought them with
Yes.
Square bases, it was supposed to be playable that way forever.
Yes. Dragon Rampant. Maybe not Lion Rampant, but still. So I mean, exactly. You want to play as many games as possible with the fewest number of miniatures.
Yeah. I mean, that was always the biggest problem with Dragon Rampant. I mean, Lion Rampant's finally getting an expansion years later with more of the Crusades. The Dragon Blue Book series, like Dragon Rampant, aren't supposed to get expansions.
No.
And even in the hard book series, haven't seen an expansion with Mad Dogs with Guns or Reality's Edge yet, though I know they're busy people. But I can rely on Joseph McCullough to make an expansion. Yeah.
I mean, if you look at his expansions for Frostgrave, which is over 10 books, and how many supplements he's created for Rangers of Shadow Deep, we will definitely be seeing multiple books and expansions for this game.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think that wraps it up, unless you have anything else to say.
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you for watching Miniature Wargaming Labs. I'm Brian.
And I'm James.
And you have a good one.
You too. See you later, Brian.